Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. You still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center?
Drag it on over, move it on over, move over, old dog, cause a new dog's moving in.
And to build a world government run by private corporate interests that are above the law, they've got to bring down the old system. But while they do that, they max out the credit, they run the old system in the ground, and they blame the collapse on what made the old system great, capitalism. When what we have today is engineered corporate crony fascism. Congressman Walter Jones will be joining us. He's spearheading, of course, the declassification of the 28 pages, but he's read it. So is Senator Graham, and they say it clearly shows Saudi Arabia carried out the attacks. NORAD was ordered to stand down. 9/11 was an inside job. And that ties into U.S. ex-intelligence chief, the former head of Defense Intelligence, says on ISIS's rise, it was a willful Washington decision and an order that the Pentagon did not agree with. We told you this 2.5 years ago when the Pentagon said no to the air bombardment, which is very rare. They just said, we're not going to follow illegal orders. And now that's come out in released DIA reports. U.S. made willful decision to support ISIS Syria. We have the video of this coming up. What did Jeb Bush come out and do in a speech he gave that CNN aired last night? Jeb Bush blames Clinton Obama for Iraq problems. They're all in on it. So it's one hand blaming the other hand, the right hand blaming the left hand. And then he goes into how we need to take out Assad to stop ISIS. Now, I predicted this would happen. Assad's battling ISIS. The West has been funding al-Qaeda, al-Nusra/ISIS for 5 years. They think we're so dumb, they're now saying bombard Assad and that will take out ISIS. That's like saying kill Superman and Lex Luthor will die. Or, I mean, it's just, it's saying Christ is the devil. It's saying black is white, up is down, left is right. It's just a total insult to everyone's intelligence. But when you realize the general public cannot even find the Middle East on a map in national surveys, and they think Sunni is Shiite, and they think Saddam carried out 9/11, he can get up there when we've ganged up on Assad and his people and the Christians and the non-radical Muslims for 5 years and killed 300,000 of them. And their tiny military, with Russian backing, has been valiantly fighting the entire Saudi Arabian jihad. And now the answer is to bomb the Syrian army. And now the airstrikes are beginning against U.S.-trained rebels who are really ISIS. They've got the F-18 Joint Strike Fighter beginning its attacks. To fight ISIS, they're going to bomb Assad, who's fighting ISIS. That'd be like having a top general, say General Greene, in the War for Independence in 1778, say, get up at a podium while George Washington's addressing troops and shoot George Washington in the back of the head and say, I did that to help the cause of liberty against the corrupt crown. I've shot George Washington in the head. That's how dumb they think we are. And you know what? We are that dumb. They put hydrofluorosilicic acid in the water that they've known for 150 years, eats holes in your brain, gives you bone cancer, and destroys fertility and makes you servile. They put that in the water, and they put it in the food up to 600 parts per million. 1.6 part per million will lower IQ by more than 10 points if you drink it for just a few years. That's a Harvard report. Do you know what 600 parts per million does in bread, powder, the powder on bread, processed bread, powdered eggs? Do you know what 600 parts per million does? It's devastating. I remember being a kid at camp, and I'd eat powdered eggs and have to go take a nap or would throw it up. Nobody told me it had fluoride in it. I just knew I felt like I'd, been run over by a truck. And it's all a big sick joke to put roach poison in your food. So, of course, they're selling baby parts. Of course, they put roach poison in most of the processed food. But let me tell you, we're having victories. 2 years ago, the FDA, under lawsuits and their own scientists saying it's deadly, said ban fluoride as a food additive and remove it. And cut it out of the water 50% as a face-saving event. So I got all this news. I got tons of news here. News stacked to the rafters, all of it over the top important, but I just go back to the basics. We're not in Kansas anymore. Truth is stranger than fiction. We told you 20 years ago they were selling baby parts, keeping babies alive, vivisecting them. Photos of Margaret Sanger addressing the Klan, her giving awards to Hitler, getting awards from Hitler. But notice, that's all 20-year-old news for our audience. That's in mainstream news today. It's finally on TV news showing Margaret Sanger at Klan rallies. The point is, I use the Force 10 from Navarone allegory. That's a composite based on a true story. Just like the Patriots based on 3 true stories. Force 10 from Navarone's base, he didn't even say this in the movie, but I read it in the history book, is based on a true story, where they bombed a dam in Croatia to flood the Germans and knock out a bridge, and it took about a day for the dam to finally crack and explode and collapse. In the movie, it takes like 20 minutes. And it's the same thing. We've already blown their ass. You understand that? We've already smashed the living hell out of the enemy. And that's why they got to take everything over now. It's like, I'll use more Hollywood analogies. It's like sending a Terminator back in history to take out Sarah Connor because we've already won in the future. They've got to accelerate, take over, shut everything down now because we've already smashed the living hell out of them. And excuse me getting so excited, but I'm just here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's all going to come out. The white slavery kidnapping rings. High-level people in the federal government don't want to be part of this. The snuff films, the body parts, the government drug dealing, the Mexican drug cartels run by the CIA, because people in the CIA don't want to go along with it. People are sick of it all. Everything's going to come out, and there's nothing they can do from stopping it. Here's the bad news. We're going to beat them on the current trajectory we're at. So they're tripling down now in their projections, in their war games, in their actuaries, in their analyses to try to beat us in the future. And I've looked at it. I don't have all their supercomputers and the rest of it, but I've got history and the good sense God gave me, and I can sit back and look at it, and I can tell you this. They're going to fail, but they may destroy the planet in the process of trying to keep control. So here's the big announcement for everybody. Get yourselves strapped in, because there's going to be big wars. There's going to be bioweapon releases. I think you're probably going to see nukes go off. They'll say they don't know who did it. It's going to get crazy. There is no doubt now we've crossed the threshold and are going into crazy town. I don't know how bad it's going to be. The faster we wake up, the more we wake up, may actually back them off. They may capitulate and just sue for peace and slow down. That's our only hope. And the reason so many of their own people are leaking info right now is they realize how evil this system is. They realize they were told a lie about globalism, that it was to bring in world peace, that it's a fraud, that it's been totally corrupted from the beginning, it was a deception, and that it all will come down. Now, excuse me using some mild French here on air. I apologize. It's just so real in my gut, in my spirit, in my mind. I know that we've already placed the explosives on the dam many times. It doesn't come down overnight, and now it's starting to crack, and the enemy can look at their system and tell it's coming down. That's why they want to go ahead and bring it all down, pose as the saviors, and grab victory from the jaws of defeat. If we fail, we're going to be snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. All we got to do is spread the word. All we got to do is tell the truth. All we got to do is say we don't comply with unconstitutional garbage. All we got to do is stand strong And this system will come down. This system will fail. It will stall out. Does it mean we'll be in some utopia? Absolutely not. Does it mean we won't have bigger problems in some areas? No, we will. But there's forces of good and evil in this world, not just the evil. And that's why everything they do is to dumb us down, because they're scared of strong men and women. They're strong of the light in our eyes, the light in our soul. They're scared of the fact that we want justice. We are outrageously horrifying to these people, and we should be. If you look at our enemies, they are pathetically weak. That's why they seek power. It's time for good men and women to stand up and say no. And when we take that first mighty step into what appears to be oblivion, that's when God will catch us. But you have to take the first step and commit and say, just like that astronaut was talking about yesterday, once you get on top of that rocket, you know there's a 1 in 50 chance it's going to blow up and kill you, but you're not afraid because you made the decision to do it. And some of us in this political system will be blown up. Some of us will be killed, destroyed, politically assassinated. But it's all part of God's greater plan. When we come back, the accelerating global meltdown now goes from a possibility to a probability as China begins to devalue.
Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government.
You still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The title of this report is A Satirist's Dream, closing the gap between anti-corruption law and reality. I could fill my 60 seconds talking about the 18 years' worth of unaudited accounts, or the bazillions that are squandered on agriculture and foreign aid boondoggles, or the Tillack case where instead of any of the alleged fraudsters being arrested, it was the journalist trying to find out about them who found himself banged up by the police. I could talk about the £6.6 million spent last year by European commissioners simply on entertainment and luxury gifts and hotels. I could talk about the wonderful spectacle of President Van Rompuy and Commissioner Ashton flying to the same meeting in Russia in separate private jets, leaving Brussels within 4 hours of each other. Instead, I'll confine myself to saying this. These things happen not because the EU attracts particularly bad people. I mean, of course, it attracts some bad people. Man is fallen, and like all institutions, it contains those who give in to temptation. It happens rather because there is no link between taxation, representation and expenditure at Brussels level. It was Milton Friedman who said there's two kinds of money in the world. There's your money and there's my money. The trouble is that in the EU, it's all your money. Hence negligence, corruption, fraud, and what we see before us today.
Mr. Co-President Nigel Farage, Freedom and Democracy.
Well, good morning, Mr. Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. The money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. And it's pretty clear that none of you have learned anything. You know, when you yourself, Mr. Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I suppose I could applaud you for having a sense of humour, but isn't this really just the bunker mentality? You know, your fanaticism is out in the open. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history. And we had the Greek tragedy earlier on this year, and now we have the situation in Ireland. Now I know that the stupidity and greed of Irish politicians has a lot to do with this. They should never ever have joined the euro. They suffered with low interest rates, a false boom and a massive bust. But look at your response to them. What they're being told, as their government's collapsing, is that it would be inappropriate for them to have a general election. In fact, Commissioner Wren here said they had to agree their budget first before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? You are very, very dangerous people indeed. Your obsession with creating this Euro state means that you're happy to destroy democracy. You appear to be happy for millions and millions of people to be unemployed and to be poor. Untold millions must suffer so that your Euro dream can continue. Well, it won't work, because it's Portugal next. With their debt levels of 325% of GDP, they're the next ones on the list, and after that, I suspect it'll be Spain. And the bailout for Spain would be 7 times the size of Ireland, and at that moment, all of the bailout money has gone. There won't be any more. But it's even more serious than economics, because if you rob people of their identity, if you rob them of their democracy, then all they are left with is nationalism and violence. I can only hope and pray that the Euro project is destroyed by the markets before that really happens.